Evening, everyone. As we begin this, I'm really excited to have all my lovely women educators. We also have Selva Vaishnavi joining us very soon. I think she's already there. A good friend of mine from the southern end of India. So somebody from the up north to somebody from the southern end. We have everyone joining us here. Excited. Thank you so much for joining. I have to start with a special prayer to somebody today as we begin this journey. This morning, we lost one of our very senior educators, women educators, Mrs. Prema Daniel, very senior early childhood educational practitioner who was also the national member of the Association for the Early Childhood Education Development, who was instrumental along with the senior leaders for creating a curriculum for the planning the early years curriculum ECCE in India when it became a national framework curriculum. So just would like to send my prayers to her for her she has worked hard and she was fortunate enough to collapse teaching us trainer, basically a trainer, and she collapsed that. I think that's one of the best thing anybody could ask for. She's been blessed today. Thanks, and then prayers for the departed soul. Thank you. Okay, that was a very sad note. I think there is somebody who's joining in. If you can mute yourself, there is some noise somewhere coming. I really don't know where the noise is coming from. Thank you for joining us. As rightly said, the topic challenge the change. Reason why we chose the topic is because this pandemic has taught us many things which we never expected. Until last year, at the same time, we were all happily, moving around, preparing for the examinations or on the verge of finishing the examination, getting ready for the new academic year. And finally, came this year where we are stuck and not sure what. Are you all hearing the noise, or am I the only person hearing the noise?
All of us are getting it.
We're all getting it. We're all getting it. It's persistent static.
Now it's fine.
Oh, it stopped now.
Yeah.
Stopped. I think it was another phone which had. Okay. Thank you. So until last year, we were all in a very different platform, and today we are in a different platform. So here we are to discuss about it. Before that, I wanted to tell you why I started Women Educators. What's the thought process behind it? Because as I keep traveling, all of us are aware that we have been traveling together for some time, and the kind of people whom we meet, we realize that the kind of importance that women educators so we play in the society and the impact that we leave in the society. So I very strongly feel that it is very important for us to educate the teachers. Most of the time, that's what we're going to discuss as well. So most of the time, what I have felt is, we are stuck to the textbooks as educators and we are emotionally connected. That's one positive way of looking at it. At the same time, that is pulling us down as as educators as well. We are unable to stretch beyond, but our contribution to the society is immeasurable. So what I had in my mind is, let's start this movement where we could connect all women educators, empower them with the needed strength or the exposure that they may require. People wanting to go in for a higher studies, wanting to network with other schools, or would like to say that I think I've done enough and I would like to definitely, have a sabbatical here, work in a different place. Maybe people in Chennai wanting to go to Varanasi, or people in Varanasi wanting to go to Africa, or maybe Japan, wanting to go anywhere, want to have some kind of a break. Can I be there for 2 years, 3 years? Definitely it would be good. As women, we are limited to, even our tours or travel is attached to the school when there is, because not many of us are independent enough. So I thought let's create a platform where we can work together, where I create opportunities to present ourselves, to take care of, where we are safe. We again feel, that safety comfort is there. So let's be safe in an environment which is good for us to travel, move, but grow, not only emotionally, but also intellectually. And we have also tied up with a lot of universities outside India. So somebody wanting to pursue their studies say that, I'd like to complete here, but at least, a month I need to spend outside India. I need to go there and then understand the exposure. We have done the, tie up with them as well. So you are welcome to do that. So these are the different agendas for the Women Educators League. Now coming for today's, we have excellent speakers. We have Vandana Saxena from Chandigarh. She is heading the Model Tribune Model School, a CBSE resource person, and then a dynamic lady who was into a different field but moved on to teaching, but doing a great job as a resource person because her school has been chosen as one of the best schools, like a model school. And I'm happy that you are here, Vandana. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Grateful to you, Malati.
Thank you, Vandana. My pleasure. Pratima, we have Mrs. Pratima Gupta, who is the Assistant Director of the Sunbeam Group of Schools, where she manages schools, colleges, and then teacher training institutes. So there are 33 other institutions which she manages. She's been associating with the Sunbeam Group for 14 years. A counselor, a student counselor, a trainer, studied in Bangalore and then, moved on to Varanasi to settle at this point of time. So happy to have you, Pratima. Thank you. You're mute. I think you're mute. Can you unmute yourself, Pratima?
Unmute. I just wanted to say just a little vain correction there, Malati. It is 21 years and not 14
21
years.
years. Sorry. 21 years, yes, with the Sunbeam Group. Okay. There we have Mrs. Bhuvaneshwari, heading the SRM Public School in Chennai. 2,000 plus kids, 4,000 parents, and then 100 teachers with a good challenge. She comes with a versatile background with 10 plus years of experience as a principal, a professional Carnatic singer, and a passionate teacher as well. So welcome, Bhuvaneshwari, welcome you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And we have Mrs. Eliamma, who's here, who is the CEO of Greenfield Schools, Chennai, a passionate educator and a trainer. Thanks for being here with us. Thank you so much. And she is also an adventure sports person, if I have to say that. She loves adventure sports and then tries many things. Thank you. Thank you for that.
And thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we have Mrs. Sangeeta, not the least, Mrs. Sangeeta, who's heading the Saraswati Kendra, the place which I love the most, I adore the most, where she's working for children with special needs and also children with gifted children, talented children. She works with all of them. And then bubbly, happy person coming from a versatile background. Thank you so much, Sangeeta. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Malti, for the nice intro.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's move on to the discussion. So my first thing is, I throw the question to, I start with Vandana, and then each one of you can take turns to, answer the question, and then, we'll move on to, as the flow goes, we'll move on to the individual discussions. I would like to understand, how do you think that the pandemic has affected the productivity of teachers? Vandana, the question is to you.
Yes. It's been revolutionary, actually. On the one hand, the use of technology. Teachers have become very productive with the use of technology, and they've learned overnight. They grew with skills which we were trying to help them learn. Overnight, they learned it. They innovated, they crafted new ideas about how to use technology and work with limited bandwidth, trained parents and students with the use of technology. So that part has improved tremendously. There has been amazing growth with that. The ability to attend training sessions, upgrade their skills, because it was like now or never. Because if they had to stay on in the education space, technology was the only way of connecting to children. Technology was the only way of connecting to each other and also with the school. So technology was the enabler, the connector. On the other hand, when we have teachers coming back to school, I find the mental health of the teachers has been affected in a very different way. Most of us who are women, there has been trauma at home. We have multitasked like nobody's business. We have early morning started our school, cooked breakfast, attended to mother-in-laws, worked with the husband, being a parent, mother-in-law, everything at the same time. So it has been a very big challenge. So on that front, when it comes to kind of helping them stay happy, that is an area where I feel we need to work. And that is what worries me most.
Okay,
Because happy teachers make happy classrooms.
true.
That is what.
Yeah, true. Agreed.
Yeah.
And agree more. Bhuvaneshwari, would you like to say that, how did you see, because you have 100 plus teachers and then teachers coming from a diverse background, how did you see your teachers? Did you find them to be productive during this pandemic, or has it affected the way they were presenting themselves?
Of course, yes, they've become very productive. I think there is a big mind shift now, man. Earlier, most of us thought productivity is measured by the quantity, the number of sessions that they had or what they taught. But now this pandemic has made them realize quality is more important than the quantity. Though they get just 1 hour or 2 hours per week to complete the same content, to take the same message to the children, now they know how to work effectively. So that has made, I think, all the teachers across more productive. It's a big learning for all the teachers, time management. Whatever they felt that they couldn't do in 3 sessions or 3 hours, now they are confident that they are able to give them in small doses and ensure that the concept is well taught. I think that mind shift, measuring productivity, on the basis of quality than the quantity, has really made all the educators very productive.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Sangeeta, but your case is completely different, isn't it? Because you have children with special needs, and then your case is very challenging. As educators, what we always discuss is, normal children, the so-called, when you bring in the bracket of normal children, it's easy to connect with them, to manage. But, for children with special needs, how did you manage, and how did your teachers, actually adapt themselves? And did you find them to be productive?
The teachers have been really productive, and as Bhuvaneshwari ma'am said, initial hiccups, initially like what is technology? Like I am sure, like even I went through, I didn't know what was Zoom, what was anything at this time last year. I just heard of all that. So my teachers just adapted, they all initial hiccups, but this is where our children who are so-called shy, reticent, as I mentioned earlier, they helped us. The parents helped us. They were the ones who told us, they encouraged us. We did have our problems, but the teachers learned in no time. And we learned. We made mistakes, we learned. But here, what is the best thing about our kids is they adapted. That bracket of these children are slow. They take time. What the other children take 1 year, these kids will take 3 years. I think it's all gone with, Corona has wiped it off. They are learning. They are learning, and they're learning so fast. And as Bhuvaneshwari ma'am very rightly put it, it is like, now our teachers have even senior level 2 classes with a particular period, our class, 2 hours, 3 hours maximum. But in that 2-3 hours, we are able to complete the portion. The children are focused. Though they keep chatting away in the classes, all that, but still that children's focus is there. And one thing I need to mention is parental involvement. Parental involvement is there, and the parents are actually watching their child, and whatever we teachers, we educators, we principals said all these years makes sense to them. Oh, this is what they have been telling us. So it has been actually a boon. And if we had thought it is a challenge, then all of us wouldn't be here talking to each other. But neither did we think that way, and neither did the students think that way, and the parents, to give them the credit.
Thank you. You put it rightly. It's such a blessing. Can I ask you to mute yourself? Can I request you to mute yourself, please? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you so much for putting it across so well that the parental involvement. So now my question goes to Pratima, because with the diverse group coming in, with so many institutions and coming from a tier 2 city, did you get the same kind of a support as Ms. Sangeeta said, Pratima? Did you get that? some same kind of support from the parents? And did you find your teachers to be productive?
Absolutely, and more, because when you say something like the tier 2 cities, when you use that phrase,
Yes.
you understand that the tier 2 cities carry more baggage in terms of proving themselves to be equally good. You are always trying to be better than what is supposedly the kind of education delivery systems which is operating in metropolitan cities or the tier 1 cities. So you try that much more, you try harder. Now, in case of our teachers, what happened, I am so glad to share, what happened was learning was typically self-directed. In a typical school routine scenario, instructions come and everyone does it. Here, you were fighting for survival. If your class was not good enough for you to interact very well with the students, who's at a loss? Students, of course, but you see what happens during the pandemic and otherwise also. Today's student is so technologically savvy that he will go and access knowledge elsewhere also. So if the teacher is not the only means through which the child gets educated, now the teacher has this onus upon himself or herself to be very good at what they do, to be very savvy, very, very adaptive to what technological needs are there in a classroom, so that the classroom remains interactive, so that the classroom remains effective, and the teacher once again emerges as the person or the vessel through which knowledge is shared. So this is one thing which I felt most of our teachers initially, like everyone before me has shared, that though there were apprehensions, but they actually started enjoying it. An element of competition crept in also, that okay, your class versus my class, your technique versus my technique, that came in, and was happy competing, happy collaboration also. And the classrooms which were hitherto supposed to be a very sacrosanct kind of a territory without the invasion of parents, I feel a very positive bridge of communication between the teacher and the parent has emerged, wherein the teacher is no longer insecure about the presence of a parent in a classroom. And in normal times, you don't kind of throw schools open, though we do a lot of open houses with parents coming in and, participating in the activities and so on and so forth. But those are curated events. But here, on a regular basis, especially with the junior lot, you could see the parent also sitting beside the child on the device, and the teacher felt supported. Teacher did not feel intimidated. So for my schools, I would say during the pandemic, it was an extremely positive experience. And like Vandana, I also say that the challenge truly begins now. When you have enjoyed the online and when a vista of opportunities and of teaching mediums has opened out to you to come back to offline, to manage the work-life balance, let's see how we cope with those challenges this year. I think that is a big challenge.
That's a fantastic point. Both you and Vandana pointed out, that we need to shift to whether we need to look at blended learning or move. What kind of a platform should we have to adapt? What are going to be the challenges? Maybe that's going to be the next topic for us. So my question now goes to Ms. Eliamma. So Ms. Eliamma, you are also on the position of, where you manage your principal and your teachers, So how do you think, this has affected their mindset? Did they feel psychologically insecure, your teachers, or were they happy? Because most of them said, the panelists spoke about, the teachers being comfortable and parents' involvement was much. And you coming from the northern part of Chennai, because North Chennai is always a challenge. Of course, she's somewhere to the middle of Chennai, but majority of her parents come from the North Chennai. So what kind of challenges did you face, Ms. Eliamma?
When I reflect back, I realize that the crisis situation are opportunities to advance. And I personally believe that we all as educators have taken pandemic as an opportunity to do the things that we could not do before. Personally, the past 12 months has been an immense learning phase, wherein, I have gone to a very large extent how to use the e-tools in the classroom for interactive purpose as well as assessment tools. And, we have upgraded ourselves and became more tech savvy. We have trained our teachers to take with confidence online classes. And, as a school and as teachers, we have created a lot of online materials and content to be, broadcasted to our students on various online platforms. Now, I also noticed that over a period of time, the teachers were also figuring out how effectively they could use some of these e-tools for interactive online classes. And one thing that I noticed over a period of time is that this crisis is also forcing the teachers to reinvent their roles. That is from transferring information to enabling learning. This is something which I found very interesting. You know, a lot of thrust and responsibility was given to the children to research and get back for the next class, which I find really, really very interesting. And over the last couple of months, how we have explored the technological spaces is something unbelievable. And even though I come from even though our school is somewhere in North Chennai, but our parents were very supportive, and we were able to make a positive wave of transformation when it came to our online classes. And it would not have been possible if they were not supporting us in our endeavors whenever we had assessments or whenever we took online classes. If they were not supporting, it would have been challenging. You know, we went to the extent of even doing project works and conducting experiments during these online classes. So it was a very fulfilling experience, I would say. And I also feel that, technology has a potential to achieve universal quality education and improve learning outcomes. Only thing, if we could address this digital divide, I felt there was a problem of this digital divide. If we could address it, we could reach out to many more and create a universal quality education. This is what I felt.
Okay, thank you so much. So, it's been a rewarding experience for all of us so far. And then we have to keep our fingers crossed to see how it's going to be, how challenging it's going to be in the coming days as we actually set into the regular new normal. So I have to ask, I'm throwing this question to all of you commonly. So what is the ratio of male and female teachers in your school? Anybody could take it up. Vandana, do you want to take it up? What is the ratio of the male and female teachers in your schools? Or if whoever is ready can answer. Is Vandana there?
Male teachers only 7%.
Okay.
Only 7% of the entire staff.
Okay.
Entire stuff, yeah.
So I'll get the answers from the others and come back to another question which is related to it. Yes, Sangeeta?
Only 2%.
2%, okay. Pratima?
Oh, it's pretty healthy. It's like almost 60-40.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
60 is female and then 40 is male.
40 is male, yeah.
I think all male teachers should shift to Varanasi. Okay.
I think I'll go with Ms. Vandana. That's, but I think next year, if you ask us, we might slowly say, maybe in a couple of years, I'll join Ms. Pratima.
Okay. 60.
Wow. Welcome.
And what is the current now? You're 7%.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Ms. Elima, yours?
We have around 85% female and I should say around 15% male staff at school.
Okay. So my question again goes here to Vandana, to start with you again. So why is it the dearth of male teachers, or do you prefer female teachers? Why do we have more percentage of female teachers?
No, we don't prefer female teachers, but there seems to have been. I've seen overall in Chandigarh there are more female teachers. It's not just to do with our school. Maybe it's I'm not sure, but I've been part of 3-4 more schools over here. I've always seen the percentage would not be more than 15%. I was part of another school earlier, there was 15%. Maybe it's something to do with the region. It's not as if a preference is given. There is no gender bias here.
Okay, so do you find the same trend, across private and public school, or the government schools have more number of male teachers? What is the trend? I just would like to understand.
Yes. Government schools have more number of male teachers compared to a private school. That I have seen.
Okay, so how about it in Uttar Pradesh, Varanasi?
Sorry?
How is the situation in Varanasi? The percentage of male and female teachers in government and private schools, or is it exclusive? The number which you said is exclusively to your school, 60-40.
I still would say, I would reiterate that it is pretty healthy. Now, I may attribute it to a region-specific kind of a phenomena wherein education and livelihood as a teacher is considered to be one of the pursuits. Okay. Also, if I were to talk about Varanasi as such, I may say that, maybe we do not have very many industries. We are a heavy tourism dependent kind of a city, basically. So most of the, financial economic pursuits revolve around that particular domain as such. And apart from that, we also have the Banaras Hindu University. So teaching, education, learning, these are highly respected and revered sort of professions there. So typically what happens in the teaching profession, that you are more a teacher by accident than by conscious design, probably does not apply strictly to the city as such. So you have a huge number of women population also opting out as teachers, and the male female ratio definitely in education is not as strained as I'm hearing my other counterparts share. It's pretty
Excellent. That's again, looked at, from the teachers coming in and then the kind of respect that they come from, it also belongs. Because interesting finding is, as I told you, the Women Educators League, as I was doing this experiment, the research on the number of ratio of male and female teachers across the globe, we had around only 68% of, male teachers earlier, 10 years back. And the rest of them were female. But today the number has reversed. 68% of the female teachers, and this is in the tertiary sector. This is the higher education. But in school education, the numbers are increasing slowly. And an interesting finding has come in wherein we have around 72% of the female teachers across, and especially within India. In the government schools, as Vandana rightly said, with the government schools, the pay structure, because, the basic pay structure is very high. So male, whoever is opted here, they would like to, their focus is only to getting into the government school than getting into a private school. Again, it is the salary barrier. And is there any other interesting reason would you like to say, Ms. Eliama, or would like to add on to the point that why the female-male ratio in schools are, very less? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that elementary schooling has got more to do about nurturing the social skills, and it is a stage wherein habit formation takes place. And it is generally believed that women are generally good at it. So hence,
Generally believe they are good at it, right?
Okay, I'll change it. They're good at it.
Okay.
And they, as women, are naturally equipped with the skill to handle the younger kids. And they have the temperament, so hence they are well suited for this teaching profile, especially for pre-primary and primary level. Generally, I don't think that teaching has got something to do with gender, because any person who's capable enough to teach or is good enough to teach can definitely bring out a good lesson plan and go ahead in the class. But there is some type of stereotype and gender expectation that is aligned with the teaching profession, that teaching has got more to do with nurturing and care. So maybe that could be one of the reasons why females are more opting than males, because of the stereotype thinking that is attached with the teaching profession. And of late, what I've seen is even women, those who are stepping into education, when we have a recruitment drive, I've largely noticed that, women are stepping into it because of the convenience factor. They see, vacation, they see short working hours, which I personally do not agree to lot many things over there. They see that there is less accountability, and, they're stepping into it. Of late, I've seen, past couple of years, I've seen many engineer graduates are entering into teaching profession, which
different thing that we need to talk about. So thank you for your input. I'm going to jump to quickly to Sangeeta. Sangeeta, I think your sector is completely different, isn't it? Moving with children with special needs, and then do you also find the male female, as you said, it's only 2%. Why is this? Are men? Why is it that they don't want to do special education? Especially the other gender. Why is it that they don't prefer doing it, or is it difficult for them to understand how to deal with children with special needs?
No, I don't agree with that. But I will be very honest in saying that my line, the special education line, the line we deal with gifted children, it's purely women-centric. It is because these children, they come to school or wherever they are going, whether it's vocational center, looking for their mother, their aunt, their grandma. They want to see an image of them. And that is where they feel comfortable. It's not that men aren't good. We are having these men, they're good. Actually, they are more analytical in the way they think, far more analytical. But where they don't, is they don't actually are able, they're unable to connect. That connect is not happening. Like, we deal with million things within our homes, with our families, with our friends. We listen, we hear, we actually empathize, sympathize. We go through a gamut of emotions, which I feel in my line the men aren't able to reach there. That connect is not there. Though when it comes to a PT sir or something, it is only a PT, it's a man. It is a man who's preferred. But when it comes to teaching, it is only even parents or anyone. Finally, I don't think it does matter whether it's a male or a female. But in this line, it is more 98% is women. And it's not that men don't want to get into special education, they do, but it's not to teach. It's to set up a center. It is to set up a school. It is like that.
Okay. Completely agree, because that's what we see when teachers enroll in the B.Ed colleges for children with special needs. We do see that it is only 99.09%. It is only female teachers who are coming in. I think we need to break the barrier, as you rightly said. Though having a man is definitely advantageous to us.
Advantageous, yes.
Yeah, it is advantageous, but they don't come forward. Thank you for your inputs. So I would move on to Bhuvneshwari. Bhuvneshwari, you said you will, in a couple of years, you will move to your 60-40% ratio. Now, when you are moving towards that phase, and in this current phase, with the existing set of 7 to 8% of male teachers that you have, do you actually find them to be productive? Is there a gap between the female and the male teachers with their past experience and with the current experience in delivering the best or adapting to any challenge or situation?
Honestly speaking, if you ask me, as an educator, yes, they are on par. But to adapt to the situation or any challenges, I feel we are far better than male. Somewhere, I think womanhood is meant for facing challenges, because change alone is permanent in the world, and for us, every day is change in all forms, be it internal or external. Pardon me?
Is it only for all the women out in the world, or is it
for the men too? But I think, of course, but the changes that we undergo, both internally and external factor, I think we are exposed to a lot of challenges than the other gender. I'm not being feminist here, but I think if you take a little time and think, I think we face a lot of challenges. Yes, coming to your question, of course, yes, when it comes to the class delivery, when it comes to being productive, yes, they are on par. But when it comes to adaptability, I think we are really, and empathy, we are, as Ms. Sangeeta rightly said, of course, yes, they are very analytical ability is very good, and a lot of things that, of course, yes, to be appreciated. But when it comes to building that bond, and even Ms. Matthew rightly said, that lower classes, children build that bond and connect with a female figure there because they see the mother. When it comes to a male, the warmth and the gentleness, the EQ that you have, I think women play a better role than male staff when it comes to the lower grade. I told you, ma'am, next year, I am expecting to go hand in hand with Pratima, because we have a senior secondary, and there are a lot of male teachers coming in. I think social stigma is also one factor. They feel it's good to work in a senior secondary school or in a college than getting down to the primary or even to the middle school. They have a second thought. And when it comes to the South India, where teaching alone is not, as again, Ms. Matthew rightly said, it's not their choice. It's, it just happened that mothers walk into the school and say, I would like to become a teacher. I think that's something that all of us face nowadays. And that social stigma, male, members are not to be seen as a teacher in the lower grade, or that's not accepted. I think that is again one reason why we in the South find less number of male staff.
I think the ratio also differs when it comes to the government schools, of course. Though
Very true, ma'am. Yes, it differs because
the wages.
Yes.
Thank you, Bhuvneshwari, for your input. So I'm jumping back to Vandana again. You said that you would love to have as many male teachers as possible, and then we would like to work with them, and I would love to recruit them, though we are not opting for it. Coming back to with the students, where we spoke about the teachers, now we are coming back to the students. Is there any kind of a difference that you see in their learning ability between the boy and the girl students, especially during the pandemic? Who responded better or who learned better? Is there any kind of a analysis or a study that you have done in each of your schools? I would like to hear about it. Starting with Vandana.
Yes. Surprisingly, even though the girl child has been through challenges, because our school caters to the little lower section of the society, and these girls have faced a lot of issues at home. Once they've come back and they're heading to the counseling cell, we hear horrendous stories of what they experienced at home. In spite of the challenge, the girl child has learned better. They're scoring better, which is a surprise, because one has a tendency of looking at people as individuals, not as a boy and girl. But when you see the challenge the girl child faced, she was working in the kitchen, especially the adolescent. She was working in the kitchen. But at the same time, the grandfather was abusive to the mother and the girl child. At the same time, in spite of that, the girl child focused better on studies, continues to score better at studies, whereas the boy child is distracted and lost in a world of their own, and with more severe cases of mental health having been affected. In spite of the fact that the boys were not made to work at home. This is the fact that they were boxed into the house, and they couldn't walk out, they couldn't have their way out of the house. I think they got lost with the excessive use of technology. I have seen this. And we have done a deep study along with a special educator and the counselor in school, as the children who are walking up and sharing their stories of turmoil that they experience at home. But in spite of, I'm again reiterating, we were surprised that the woman continues to face challenge in a better way. It's an observation.
From childhood, we are going through that.
Yes.
Yes. Getting used to it. Yeah, thank you so much. Ms. Pratima, would you how did you see the ratio of the children performing? Because it's quite I felt heavy, really. I'm feeling heavy at this moment, listening to Vandana. The children going through so much of turmoil, because that has happened even in my own state. I have been hearing, and then throughout this pandemic, I was counseling a lot of school heads and the couple of parents personally about how do we make children come out of this, because they were exploited by their own grandparents, grandfathers, and then the own brothers exploited, and these children were going through a lot of harassment. And despite it, they wanted to study, and a lot of schools have come forward. Deep down, Tamil Nadu, there were many principals who were in touch with me, and then who were asking me how do we tackle the situation, and I was giving them a lot of guidance. Now, I would like to hear how did you face such kind of an issue, or was there any kind of a difference in learning you found out, and how did you cope with that, Pratima?
Okay, I am going to talk a little about the basic trend that we have been talking about and we have been seeing in our schools, or particularly in the region also. And this I would like to refer to even the pre-pandemic times or the before COVID era. Girls have been at the forefront of all endeavors, whether it is declamations, whether it is the academic results, whether it is sports, or simply taking initiative. I see girls taking really giant steps towards being in positions of not only leadership, but positions of taking initiative and excellence, overall excellence. This is one thing which we have been consistently seeing in our schools. And therefore, during the pandemic times also, it was not a surprise, because maybe the female child has a greater sense of accountability, has a greater sense of responsibility, is generally more sincere towards performing an allotted task within the given time vis-a-vis her male counterpart, at times tends to procrastinate or gets the feeling that he will be able to get away with certain things, So probably the girl child is also at home, not so easily let off the hook, so to say, if she says she has to perform well. So I would say what we saw was the typical trend, as in the girls are sincere, the girls are doing. Those boys who are sincere, who are invested, continue to do very well. And those who were usually the distracted and the more kinesthetic kind of learners in the classrooms were, of course, bored out of their wits. But what I would like to say and kind of endorse what Vandana has said before me is that the trauma of abuse, the trauma of harassment via the technological medium also happened to a lot of girls. There were more instances of girls being bothered by online stalking. There were more greater instances of girls being, made, say, victims of a particular kind of mental harassment also. And of course, at homes also, I would not say that it was easy, more difficult for them than the boys, but it certainly vis-a-vis the boys, the expectations were more, the kind of thinking that we have, the programmed kind of stereotypical thinking that we have, that if the grandfather has to be helped to get medicine, the boy can continue to be in the classroom, whereas the girl naturally is told to get up and do it. Or if it comes to helping out mother in the kitchen, it has to be naturally the daughter who follows the mother and probably helps her out. So these kind of stereotypical behavior patterns did play their very detrimental role during the pandemic times. But I would say that girls have been leading. There has been an upward trend of girls taking so much initiative that sometimes I start bothering about my boys, as what is happening out there. They also need kind of proper role models, role models who are probably softer, who do not have that rough in your face machoism, who are not all about testosterone and muscles and rippling biceps, but who cry, who hold a child, who sort of wipe off tears, or who put salve on a grazed knee and still be called men. So there is the paucity of these kind of role models, which is why perhaps we find boys behaving so much like boys. And if they behave otherwise, then they are termed sissies or ninnies, So which is why you find girls being more sincere, more smart, and taking initiative.
As you rightly said, Vandana, that's the dream. That's the kind of a boy that every mother likes to have, and then every girl likes to have the husband. But unfortunately, we are yet to see them in reality. Of course, they here and there are quite a lot of them.
It will happen. It is going to happen when we have more men coming in at the elementary school level. It is going to happen, and it will happen, because who's going to provide boys the role models at that stage of development when they want to understand what it is to be nice and what it is to be brave and strong according to the conditioning that is so rampant.
So I'm fine. I'm moving on to Eliama. Ms. Eliama, would you like to add to the question which the previous speakers were taking in? Did you find the difference? And then, what is it that you, kind of an offering? Because, I know that yours is also a co-educational school. And then you must have seen them. And did you evaluate the difference in the teaching and learning process, or maybe the learning process of students? Did you do something to address that?
Yeah, Dr. Malti, we did assessment patterns were followed, and I also personally spoke to quite a lot of children over a period of time. Personally, I spoke to them. Now, what I noticed was boys were finding especially hard to adjust to the situation by being home whole day and night. They were finding it really hard. And the second thing that I noticed, they never liked that idea that the parents are around them when the teaching is happening. They never liked that idea, but girls were a little more open. And the second thing I noticed was girls were more enterprising than the boys. They made use of all the opportunities that were offered to them. We went in for a lot of student enrichment programs, and we floated out a lot of special programs which the students could enroll for. And I see the number of girl takers were more than the boys. So I felt the girl students were more enterprising than the boys. That is what I noticed in my school largely.
Okay, so did you do something to pull in the boys? What kind of measure did you take to pull in the boys? Buckle up, boys! Come on, buckle up, boys! Any kind of a measure that you took?
You won't believe, Dr. Malti, we had initiated a program for the children. Make your own website. And I spoke to many boys, and they said, "Ma'am, we are not interested in technology." I said, "But you do play games. You could create your own website projecting these interesting facts about the games that you're playing." But they were not interested. They were not interested at all. Their interest was, they didn't want to invest that time in learning something new. They would spend that time playing a game or watching a television or something like that.
Okay, that's an interesting finding, because I have seen that as well, because not many are wanting to come forward. Girls are always enterprising. I think somewhere we need to strike a balance for the society to have the maintain this balance. Say at the end of the day, it's all about balancing in life. Anyway, this world is made up of both of them, and then we need their we need their participation equally in all that is going to happen, be it politics or be it household. I think we need their presence. So I think we're running short of time because we need to open up questions as well. So my final question goes to Vandana again. How do you see the way forward, Vandana? Teaching and learning in schools, how do you look at it in the coming days? Because that's the tone that you begin with, and then I'm ending it with that. So how do you see the way forward? And then is there anything that you would like to share that, with the fellow educators and the other educators who are watching, in terms of innovation, bringing in innovation, or, maybe techniques that can be used, or emotional, this I'm sharing it with everybody. You all can take it up and then answer. Is there anything specific that you have to share the way forward?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about one case study. I'm just going to describe it and talk about it. I think it will answer many questions. So we have this colleague at school. He's the computer teacher. And during this pandemic, I have seen this boy go through a lot of emotional turmoil, because he was very proficient with the use of technology, and our school has had parents with very limited bandwidth, very, very limited bandwidth. So in a way, you can say that this boy, who is also an ex-student of our school, a lot of the pressure of the digital divide rested on his shoulders. We had some teachers, let's say about 30% teachers who didn't know anything about technology. And so what happened, the communication channel opened with him directly. So he took a lot of pressure during this pandemic time, and he went through a nervous breakdown twice over. Nearly, I won't say nervous, nearly. Now, once I met him in the month of August, and I connected with him, and we brainstormed, and I helped him, because he's brilliant. He's brilliant with his work. He is very dedicated, very committed, very, very sincere in his work, and he came up with various strategies in a way where we were training parents and we were talking to teachers, and he came up with the simplest solutions that worked. But he needed support at the emotional level, which is what I provided for him in the month of August. So I was counseling him, and then he started again in a new way. By the end of February, he came to me and he wanted to put in his resignation. He put in his resignation, and I was shocked. So, but I said, it's all right, fine, you're putting in your resignation, you must have thought about it. He says, I'll go in 15 days, whereas the notice period is 2 months. So I said, well, there is a notice period of 2 months, you'll have to pay. He says, okay, ma'am, I'll pay. But what I didn't do was, I did not try to stop him. I helped him in those 15 days, because I told him, when you're leaving an organization, how you exit from the organization is very important. So I was his support system in an indirect manner for 15 days. And he handed over his responsibilities very slowly to different people, which is when and finally, you wouldn't believe it, Malati, we organized a farewell for him. But the farewell that was organized was not called a farewell. We called it a picnic. And we had so much fun in that picnic. We were together, we played games, and at the end of the picnic, which was meant to be a farewell, of course, there were tears, etc., because his senior teachers who were teaching in school couldn't let him go. I don't know whether the technology buddy was leaving or otherwise, I don't know. I was there as an observer. I participated in all the fun, and we finished and we reached home by 1 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, he called me up and he says, "Ma'am, I don't want to leave." So the moral of the story is that what he needed was appreciation on not a virtual platform. He was missing that human connect. He was missing that, and the 15 days that he was in a school, we helped him to manage his time. We helped him, together we understood about how much he was doing, and suddenly he felt valued. Suddenly he felt that he was, I don't think he felt he was indispensable. He said, "Ma'am, the reason that I was leaving is no longer there. People have come up and spoken about me, and so many good wishes given to me about me leaving for the next assignment, that nobody does things like this." So what I'm trying to say is, the message that I'm trying to make, please don't forget that everybody out there is waiting for that deep emotional connect, that appreciation, that wanting to be more aware of their own self, and wanting to needing help to look deep into themselves. That need has become stronger than ever before. People who are proficient with the use of technology, there'll be many now, many of them, because people have grown. But what we need to continue doing through our organizations is take people deeper into themselves. Very, very important. And that is something which is going to work for the rest of our lives.
That's beautiful.
That is the message that I want to give. That's it. Thank you, Malan.
That's beautifully summed up, Vandana. That's beautifully summed up. So the way forward, connect personally, build a relationship. Beautiful. So Pratima, over to you. Yeah.
Well, for me, I would like to cite a moment. This happened some days back. This was prior to the examinations, and parents were clearing up pending fee dues, this, that, and the other, because the students had to take examinations. So there was this gentleman who walked into my office, and he said that, well, I have a daughter who studies in class 10, and then I have a son who studies in class 8, and he had certain dues, and he told me. So I said, "How are you going to manage all this?" So his solution to the problem kind of shook me out of my stupor of how things are around us and whether there is change and so many things. Because he told me very simply that my daughter is already in class 10, she's doing well. So next year, I'm going to take her out of your school because it's a private school, it's kind of more expensive, and I will put her in a government school, some government school. He was not even concerned about which. And I said, then, ma'am, I am going to continue to keep my son here. And I want him to come out and do his class 12 from your school. And I said, why is that? But I mean, if you cannot afford for the girl, why the boy? To which, to my utter horror and consternation, he said that, well, he has to make a living and he has to be good and he deserves a good education. So, ladies and gentlemen, wake up and smell the coffee. Who said this is year 2021, and this is the mindset. Let's face it, in spite of so many educational institutions, in spite of all the groundbreaking work we have been doing. So my moment of epiphany at that point of time was there. The work is not over. We're fighting the same battles every day, and a lot has to be done in terms of reaching out to the parents, changing mindsets. So technology, of course, is here to stay. But what is very important is to reach out to people to make. Otherwise, well, we have so many women's forums and so on and so forth. But if in the year 2021, a girl can be pulled out of a school for the sheer reason of her gender, and that because the boy in the family deserves a better education because he has to have to make a better living, that tells me that our work is far from over. We have to reach out to people. We have to change mindsets. We have to work so much more, not just for the cause of education, but definitely for the cause of equal opportunity.
True. Miles to go before we sleep.
Exactly, and this is my way forward. This is my way forward. That, you know, blended learning, hybrid classrooms, whatever you are talking of, the person at the end of receiving the education or the academic delivery is a human being, and what is going on in his or her mind is going to shape the destiny of an entire generation. Do not lose connect with them.
Yeah, very well said. Very well summed up. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pratima.
Thank you.
Yes. Moving on to Ms. Eliama.
Dr. Malti, what I've noticed in few of the household, you know, during the pandemic time, I've seen that Indian men have started helping in the household chores. So what is happening? You know, the younger generation is watching and observing that. And this division of housework, I'm not saying it has happened on a very large scale, but at least somewhere there has been a start. And what we have seen is that division of housework has helped the family members to spend more time together. And it is also it may also bring about a change in the way the younger generation thinks about it. And I feel that engaging children in the household work, you know, it brings in a sense of equality, and at the same time gives them some important life skill. Now it's immaterial whether it is a boy or a girl, you know, they need to be involved in the household task. We need to teach our son and daughter how to prepare a simple meal, wash dishes, you know, to do the laundry work, even to fix up, suppose say light, or to do a little bit of minor plumbing work. We need to teach our children this. And this is, home is a laboratory from where we could bring about a sense of equality and a change over a period of time.
So home is beyond our control. So can something be done in schools for that?
I think we need to initiate certain programs in school which are more in tune to life skills. You know, I've you know, in some of the schools abroad, you know, they make the children iron their clothes, polish their shoes. They have certain activities which has no restriction on genderness. You know, everybody has to do it. So I think this will bring in a sense of equality. I think if we could take up in our own classes as a part of life skill activity, if we could take it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much for beautifully putting it across. Ms. Sangeeta, your call, your take on this. Sangeeta, are you there?
She has to unmute.
Yes.
Huh. Yeah. What I would like to say, as Ms. Pratima rightly said, that each child is a person, is a human. And we as a society must remember that we are not dealing with one generation. We are dealing with the next, maybe even 10, 20 generations. So when we are shaping a child, we must shape the family. So when parents come to us, whether it is not to do with gender, it is awareness is just not about academics. Awareness is about how to live life, how to be a good human, how learning happens by just being aware and just being able to connect with at a good level, at a decently good level with everyone. So that awareness, so life skills, awareness about themselves, their family's role in the society. That is something we need to work on as educators.
Okay, so I have a very quick question to you because I know we are running short of time. Just a quick question. You know, when it comes to raising children with special needs, I always find that, you know, as you rightly said, you know, it is the mother, you know, the female teachers who enroll and then who get trained to, you know, train the children with, deal with the children with special needs. Similarly, I also find the parental, when it comes to parental involvement, it is only most of the time it is the mother, you know, 95% of the time it is the mothers who are involved in day-to-day, even if it is a child who is 40-year-old with autism, because I have seen it in my own circle, you know, if it is a 40-year-old child, it is the mother who is there with the son or the daughter taking care. And then men usually, you know, try to shun away from their responsibility and not willing to take being accountable for the child. So is there anything that can be done, you know, to create some kind of an awareness about it, you know, even parenting styles amongst the students or with the younger generation?
Yeah, excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, that's fine. Mona, can we continue with you until then, until Ms. Sangeeta comes?
Sure. Ma'am.
Yeah. Would you like to
uh,
answer that question? Take on that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think before I take on that, she's back. You want me to leave it to
Yeah.
her or?
Sangeeta, can you take it up?
Yeah. I can take it up now. Okay. Yeah, I do agree. Yes, it is 95% the mothers. It is more because, as I told, I think Elimma ma'am told, it is the mindset. It is the father. It is the father refuses to accept. The acceptance is less. The acceptance is not there in most of the cases. So what happens is the entire burden falls on the mother, who, by virtue of being a woman, which is the best thing to happen to us, is we immediately understand and accept. Okay, this is what it is. Now, what do I do with it? The men are not like that. But once they accept, as I have few fathers, once they accept, the change they bring about in the child, in their child, is just, something you need to watch. And the child also feels, okay, my dad has accepted me. But then, yes, this acceptance, there are many cases where I see the father abandons the wife and the child. It's a sad reality, which is changing, but it will take some time. This is what I said in my earlier, when I said, the way to go forward is just not, okay, batch after batch. The awareness that this is, this is something we need to address. Of course, mothers do play a large role, but yes, gender matters.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Bhumna, coming to you, challenge the change. Okay. So, how would you like to, challenge the change that is already here? I wouldn't even say it is on its way, but it is already there. We just started, we have just resumed the schools, and then suddenly, and we are getting ready for the next academic year. And then we have closure of schools, which is coming already, where we have the constant change coming in, where it is closed indefinitely. We do not even know when it is going to open up. Children have kind of settled in now. So do you find, as I asked you the question earlier, how do you look the way forward to be? Because in this situation, again, uncertainty, indefinite closure of schools, children getting back to their shelves, hiding. So what is your suggestion for the fellow educators, or how do you think that we will be together, we'll be able to handle the situation?
Yes, ma'am. I think one great lesson that all of us have learned today during this pandemic is to value things around us. I think that lesson has made us, challenge whatever changes that come forward and still get over it successfully. And with a GO that is passed now in our state, and the schools are going to be closed, the board exams are going to start from May. I really have no words, but I think nothing is impossible when you are determined to do something to the children. So with the limitations that we had, we really worked, all of us worked really hard, all the educators out there worked really hard to ensure that there is some progress in every child. So the situation that we are going to face in our state is not that great, but I think all the strategies that we used earlier, and now that we have children in our campus for a few days, few months, we really know where they stand. We really know their needs. So I think we have to take it positively and have a devise new strategy, because we, the womenhood, are always known to taking up challenges and challenge to change. That I think challenge the change is something that we have been enduring all through the life. So I think we really need to. It's a tough task, ma'am, ahead. But with determination and a good strategy, I think we will be able to get through this. It's quite challenging. Yes.
Thank you, dear panelists, because that was a lovely discussion, starting from Vandana with the with the case study of giving us. You have all of you in your unique way, put it across in the beautiful way for the viewers and for the women educators, fellow women educators, to take it across. How do we deal, connecting with people, teaching them for generations, and then striking a balance between the boy and the girl child, and then to face the challenges, be prepared for any kind of an emergency or unexpected situation. I think that's what we are geared for, and then with the days coming ahead, not sure what is going to happen with the wave 2 people are talking about. Let's keep our fingers crossed and then keep our country in, prayers. And then as women educators, it is important for us, to do our best to march ahead because so we are in the process of creating generations.
Malati, if I could just share something with everyone, because there's such a distinguished panel and a whole lot of participants. I just want to share one thing which I came across in my readings on the web yesterday. I just want everyone to focus upon this, that India has slipped from 108th to the 112th position on the Global Gender Gap Index 2020 by the World Economic Forum. I would want all of us as women to contemplate upon it, that we have slipped from 108 to 112th position in our gender inequality and our gender gap. And as women, we have to take cognizance of this. We rank 112th in a group of 153 countries that was surveyed. And our happiness index, at our happiness index survey also, we have again slipped to the 139th position. So we today are not a very happy country. And then within this slightly unhappy country, also at the 139th position on the Global Happiness Index, our gender gap has widened even more. And the survey says that it's going to take 100 years for us to bridge this gap. And the gap exists in the forums of politics, education, health. So we really, really need to do something very constructive, very positive with the generations that we are teaching and educating in our schools. Pandemic or no pandemic, humanity and equality is a birthright for everyone. So let's work towards saving it.
That's beautifully summed up. That's beautifully summed up. I think, that sums up the entire, the first ever meet of the women educators, because, we need to look back to see where we stand and then why is the gender gap widening, and then happiness index, why are we trailing back? I think that's a question for all of us to reflect back. And with that, I take this opportunity to thank each one of you for participating, in this panel, and then I look forward to your continued support in the coming days and months to support the fellow women educators across the globe. Thank you so much for joining in large numbers from across the country. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much, Malati.
Malati. Thank you. Thanks. It was
Thank you.
enjoyable. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Everyone. Super.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.